Hello there, and welcome to my latest podcast. I've spent the last few months working to complete the edit of my book and to redesign my online presence, and in particular, to reorganise the way I present and organise my podcasts. As you will see from now on, where I am talking about Magdalene issues, these will be recognisable by the podcast title, A Magdalene Voice. If anything, my summer has been all about Magdalene issues. If you are listening into your first podcast produced by me, my Magdalene connection is found through my dad, who was a Tuam boy, later boarded out, and my grandmother via Loughrea, Tuam, and the infamous High Park Magdalene Laundry in Dublin. She died in that institution after spending over 42 years in captivity in these institutions. But her story doesn't end there, as she is one of the 155 women who were apparently exhumed from the High Park Laundry site, with many questions remaining. In today's podcast, I'm going to talk briefly about two things: creating a campaign of pragmatic solutions, and to talk about a manifesto for Magdalenes for the forthcoming Irish general election. Those who follow me will know that since March of this year, I have been promoting a bill that I drafted and have presented to TDs and senators, and as I understand it, it is currently undergoing due consideration of its merits and practicality. Now, any citizen can write to any member of the Oireachtas or of its committees, setting out their proposals for a new or a change in legislation. My bill is designed exclusively to recognise all those who died before a state apology, which has prevented their surviving families to make any kind of claim in any redress scheme. These, the invisible dead, are unknown. The country does not know their names, and their experiences are forgotten. On the question of a state apology, I was struck when reading the Coppin v Ireland case of the dissenting opinion expressed by two judges, where they stated, "Apology without acknowledgement of the harms inflicted cannot be considered to be constituting full rehabilitation. Ex gratia payments and waivers prevent the survivors from ever seeking truth in the courts. Denying access to justice and accountability leads to denial of the right to seek full rehabilitation. It also offered general, not individual, apology at political level, while denying the victims access to truth." Whatever the final decision in this case, it suggests discomfort with the actions of a state and support for the notion that, alive or dead, many have been left behind, which is the central purpose of my bill. The trick in any campaign is to create something that recognises these deficits, along with also recognising the wider needs of society and developing a pragmatic solution. My simple bill provides a workable solution which does not enrich but pays forward, in the memory and name of the deceased, a modest sum of money to a state-recognised charity paid by the state. Relatives then receive a signed copy of the said state apology from the Taoiseach and President of Ireland. In presenting this bill to Oireachtas members, I was conscious of the fiscal argument or element which is constitutionally driven. Now, there are two schools of thought. Firstly, where you apparently can't suggest any fiscal measure that imposes a burden on the public purse. This is where a fair number of TDs and senators sit. And secondly, the position where you can demonstrate either no fiscal imposition or a minimal fiscal imposition on that public purse, perhaps demonstrating a modest cost with a demonstrable reduction in that liability during the course of its term. This is what I call the art of the possible, and where I believe the power of the possible exists. This is what I've done within my bill, and I have delivered a financial model to support my draft bill and my arguments that it should be made law. Now, will it succeed? I just don't know. Will it happen overnight? Well, that's very unlikely, but it presents an opportunity for respectful engagement with those I seek to influence. There may be some who will disagree with my initiative, and that's okay. I've been around activism on a wide range of issues since 1997, and from that time I've learned that it is very important to listen to other activists and their objectives. There's no right or wrong way to do activism. Each will have their own motivations and their own objectives. Into the general mix of activism, no matter the subject matter, there exist different ranges of action and emotion, from absolutism to fatalism to pragmatism. In my experience of activism, I see the importance of ploughing your own furrow, but working, where you can, to acknowledge or support others in their goals. Through my years of activism, I've also come to realise that sometimes authoritative figures can present a challenge to an activist, who may be worried that they may not have the skills to present and confront difficult issues. In my experience, I've seen that this is rarely the case. Equally, sometimes those authoritative figures use the power of patronage to favour an individual cause at the expense of other similar causes or voices, causing artificial fissures in the overall objectives. Now, through this summer, I was mindful of these and many other Magdalene issues. I recognised that the Irish general election was fast approaching and wondered how the overall Magdalene community objectives would be recognised in that political campaign by all the political parties. As we approach the elections, politicians will be conscious not just of the needs of the wider electorate, but they will no doubt have at the back of their minds the controversy that has surrounded Magdalene issues in the last 2 years, and indeed for even longer. I thought that whatever about each group's or indeed individual initiatives to achieve justice for their own objectives, there was a need to perhaps present, in the form of a manifesto for Magdalenes, key objectives which the political parties should pay heed to, possibly commit to, which the majority of the Magdalene community could also subscribe to. When I speak about the expression Magdalenes, I'm talking about it as an overarching expression that encapsulates all the experiences, with no limits on any of those experiences, suffered by the victims and survivors, irrespective of the institution, the very vehicle of which was created by the Church and State Magdalene system. As I thought more about this, I also thought about a potential format that could be used, or not used as the case may be, by all in the Magdalene community. So, through my Twitter and Facebook account, I've asked some simple questions. I began by asking that whether as a victim or survivor, or indeed an activist, have you been impacted by the Magdalene issue? I then asked, if you support the idea of a manifesto for Magdalenes, then what would you like to see in such a manifesto? Now, manifestos are controversial because they are essentially documents presented to us as the electorate in which a political party sets out its vision for the nation, deliverable through its promises. Now, we all know that political parties are good at dodging their manifestos, but that does not mean you should not try and influence their own election documents. In posting my thoughts, I've invited people to message me with their own thoughts of what they would like to see in a manifesto for Magdalenes. I would collate the views and opinions and draft and present a 10-point plan where the Magdalene community could perhaps be seen to have more in common than what perhaps separates them. A bonus when dealing with the political class. I considered that if I managed to create this Manifesto for Magdalenes, I would then make it freely available to all in the Magdalene community to use or not to use in their activities, in their engagements with Oireachtas politicians during and up to the general election. It would keep their voices and objectives alive through this period. In other words, not just for the election, but beyond, when they can take up the mantle of their own objectives with their new batch of politicians. Equally, the political parties could consider and adopt, if not all, but some of the 10 proposed points in such a Manifesto for Magdalenes. Now, if they didn't, it could produce yet more opportunities for engagement and talking points. Now, I don't consider that I have all the answers, and I'm certainly not prescriptive, but I do consider that we have this rare opportunity to make all our voices heard. At the end of the day, there's nothing to lose and potentially everything to gain. But in taking part in such an exercise, we need, in my opinion, to present a strong element of pragmatism within our objectives thereafter, because that is the place where political consensus lives. Now, as I said, I could be wrong. You may disagree with what I have to say, and nothing changes for the individual or group initiatives going forward, even if you subscribe or don't subscribe to this Manifesto for Magdalenes proposal. But at least through this small initiative, we will be talking and thinking about the possibilities before us. The possibilities of a real justice. Until the next time, take care.